This can actually go down to 5 yards. All right, all you have to do to slip the scales is hold on to your turret if you would like. These are lift to operate, so it'll actually still release if it's just down, and you're going to use your included tool, twist lefty loosen on that stainless bit on top, and I can usually do it with my thumb past that point. This does not have a zero stop to set, so all you have to do is actually lift this off the top, find the zero, index that, line it up with your witness line, push it back down, I'll get it started again, and then tighten it up with that provided tool. And now all I need to do is test for function. Looks like it lines up right on the witness line. Each click to my eye looks like it's lining up exactly where it should. And back to zero. Now we're going to test it on steel quick and make sure that all the adjustments did line up truly. Okay, I've got my Ghost Wolf high resolution lenses on. I'm going to take a few shots here through this LPVO at 600 and I think it's 622 to my IDPA. Right now I'm shooting a full-size IDPA because I'm shooting a 300 blackout with some less than optimum bullets, but should be sufficient to get a few hits on that target down there. Again, we're at 622. That's what I'm estimating from right where I'm at. Okay, load it up. High resolution lenses matter when you're looking through a scope. I don't want to darken that image. The sun is going down. I don't want it to be dark. I don't want it to be cloudy or foggy. I don't want to have extra distortion and parallax effects like some cheap lenses have. These lenses with the Ghost Wolf are very clear, minimal sun shading that's going to go on, minimal darkening, just enough to make a difference when it is sunny out, and still clear enough that it really helps keep my image pretty light in this scope. So I'll go ahead and turn on my target camera and you should be able to see these impacts. Apparently I put the camera directly in the ejection path of this rifle, so that was a mistake, but they're on there. They're definitely on there. Plenty of hits. What is that, 5 or 6 in a row or something like that? I think it was 5 in a row. It's a reliable enough bullet to impact an IDPA. I'm happy with that. Most of what I'm interested in is how does this optic perform? And it dialed to my data, and it is what it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be at about 12.3. So I dialed 12 and held the about 0.3. And windage is changing here. I'm back and forth on windage. I do have probably a large spread for SD with the particular bullets I'm using, so I'm just letting that be a factor in there and deal with it as I go. But I'm actually pretty happy with what I'm seeing so far on the optic side. I was able to acquire a pretty good parallax-free image. I really bobbed my head around and wiggled, and I wanted to be as parallax-free as possible. So you have on the parallax wheel goes from 100, 200, 500, and then infinity. And so I was a little before infinity, kind of going back and forth there. Illumination, couldn't really see illumination on this bright of a day. It's pretty bright. I think in dusk it'll be fine. But I really do enjoy being able to shoot on 8 power. 1-6s are great too, but 8 power just gives me that one little extra bump. And at 600 yards, I can see my impacts and I can definitely see my misses, even in a little bit of vegetation down there. It is dusty. It has been relatively dry. And so that helps with the conditions, but the optical clarity is sufficient that I can see those hits and misses. I can even tell where they are on my white target, which is, it's pretty good for a 1-8 to be able to really pick out hit to hit. I can see which one is picking up there. I like that a lot. The mount is a very comfortable mount. It's a good height for this, and I do recommend this combination together if you go with it. And, being that it's a first focal plane, if I'm on 3 power or if I'm on 8 power, it doesn't matter because those subtensions are going to be the same. So the holdovers are still true. But getting out this far, I'm definitely going to start dialing because I'm beyond the range of the 10 mils of the reticle. At 500, I would be okay, but now that I'm at 622, I do need to dial a little bit. And so I dialed 12, which is 2 revolutions of this, and I'm going to remember that. And so when I'm done shooting for the day, I'm going to dial it back down to my 0, and I'll probably even go confirm my 0 one more time just to make sure it's held all the way through. But I'm happy with it. The reticle makes sense. It's easy to acquire the center dot, and it's not so busy that it's blocking the misses when I do have a miss. I can see where they're landing pretty well. All right, I'm a few minutes away from sundown, and it doesn't matter what optic it is, how big the objective bell is, what kind of glass it has, doesn't matter. When it gets this close to sundown and it's very dim, there's not a lot of light in the sky even left over, lots of tree cover, it's just dark out, okay? And so I typically reduce magnification. Even on this 1-8, I'm gonna reduce it down to 5 or 6 power. The fact that it's a first focal plane means that I don't have to worry about my stadia or my holdovers or my reticle not being lined up in the right place. I still have to monkey with the parallax just a little bit, although I've noticed that between 100 and 200 yards, it's a minimal touch up. 50 yards, that's where I'm gonna adjust that parallax more. Parallax matters closer and not so much further, although it has an effect at all distances. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot a little bit at 100 and 200 yards. I've got a 10 rounder loaded up just for YouTube, and I'm going to shoot some 300 blackout here, and I will knock it down. I'll probably knock it down to 4 or 5 power and engage some of these targets with some just FMJ ball ammo. Should be able to hear those impacts, and I'll tell you about the image and how the reticle works on low power and a little bit of faster shooting as well. So I actually really enjoy offhand shooting, not off the bench, not off a tank trap or anything else, just sometimes sitting down in a position like this or standing, maybe a sling from time to time. But I just enjoy shooting like that. I think it's a good challenge, it's functional, it's practical. So I've got some targets here at 100, I've got some at a little past 200, and I'm just gonna throw a few down there and talk about the reticle. I'm gonna start off at 1 power at 100, and just throw some down there. So illumination wise, I don't think it's quite functional at this hour. There's 2 impacts in a row at 1 power at 100 yards. Let's go to 200 yards. I'm gonna adjust that parallax now just a touch on 8 power. And 8 power field of view is not huge. Oh, there's a deer running through. I gotta wait a second, wait for that deer to go. So field of view is not huge. It is gonna darken the image a little bit. And I prefer In low light, I'm gonna run it down to 5 power at this kind of distance. It's just pretty dark. And even 4 power is really good. And then it just seems to be brightened back up for me a little bit. My leg is really sore from a competition yesterday. I was in an awkward position for a while. So at 4 power, it just brightens up that image. And it helps me get those impacts because I feel more stable. It's kind of a psychological thing. But the 1 power, the reticle it's just a little bit on the light side for boldness. I would say it could go a little thicker on the boldness overall, but it's certainly functional, and I'm able to contrast with my targets here at 100 and 200 yards without too much trouble. When it comes to that parallax, if I'm pretty close, I do like to dial it back, but if I'm shooting between 100, 200, 300, I pretty much have been able to leave it at 100 yards and make functional impacts. It's not going to be the clearest image because that's why the parallax is there, to clear up your focus of your image, but it doesn't stop me from hitting my targets. Let's start off at 100 yards parallax. And I'm not going to touch the parallax, but I am going to bump this up to, let's go to 4 power. And the target still looks pretty darn clear overall. Is the 1 power perfect? No, it is not perfect. Is the 8 power perfect? No, it's not perfect. And at this price point, you really shouldn't expect perfection out of those things, but I actually think it's pretty decent, especially considering the price point. I was able to make repeated impacts today. I actually went out to 800 yards, and I think I have footage so far of everything from close distances, 50, 100, 200, out to 800. And I'm liking the reticle. I think the reticle makes a lot of sense. On low power, just a touch light, maybe a little bit thin at times, but I'm still being able to contrast between my 100 and 200 yard targets that are basically shot up in gray against a gray background target. The one thing that's gonna happen is when the light is low and it's dull, like I just had a little while ago, I had a deer just out of focus and also out of frame a little bit for me. My field of view on 8 power was not enough to catch that, so backing it off to around 4 or 5 power was sufficient. I could still easily make my hits at 200 yards. Hopefully you can hear that. Those aren't difficult, and I can also see a lot more. It's just brighter overall. The reticle starts to pop. It's big enough that I could actually use those holdovers at 4 and 5 power. Believe it or not, if you're in a stationary position, they're still functional. And if I was on the move and I was going quickly between targets, I think 5 power, 6 power, I'm still really good with those holdovers. They're big enough, the numbers are bold enough, and I can tell what's going on. So close distances, far distances, I think this is going to be a pretty good competitor. As long as you don't need a 0 stop, you can still dial on these. If you do what I do, and I remember, so I dial, I shoot, and I dial back to 0. And then I just confirm my 0 again today because I always want to know where it's at. And when I store this, I'm going to store it on 1 power, and I'll probably not worry about illumination and probably leave the parallax around 10 yards if I'm going to use it for something more of a indoors defensive gun. If I'm thinking in a hunting scenario, I'll probably leave it at 50 yards parallax because that's where my shots are, and I probably would go to 4 power. I think that's going to be like my hunting setup. In fact, maybe I should hunt with this. What do you guys think? Should I go deer hunting with this one this year? You go ahead and tell me down in the comment section. If you already have one of these, let me know by commenting down below.